Alrighty, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today is Subscriber Deck Day. So, today we're going to be playing a Mardu Aggro list, which is focused around Glass of the Guild Pact. This deck was submitted to us by Liquid Power, so thank you very much for submitting your deck. It looks absolutely sweet, and I look forward to playing it. If you do want your deck to be featured on the channel in the future, then be sure to leave it down either in the comments section below, or send it to me via email or in the Discord as well. We have two areas in the Discord. If you are a Twitch subscriber or a Patreon, make sure to let me know in the emails or send it directly via Discord so that I know, and you get bumped towards the front of the queue. Anyway, what is this deck? Well, it is built around Glass of the Guild Pact, which is a 2-mana artifact that says multicolored creatures you control get +1/+1. So essentially this deck is an aggro list that cares about gold cards, and gold cards are effectively these multicolored ones right here. So we have this as kind of our payoff of the deck building restriction, but we also have Hero of Precinct 1, which is a 2-mana 2/2 that says whenever you cast a multicolored spell, put a 1/1 white human creature token onto the battlefield. So when we actually evaluate these cards, we have to keep that in mind. So they might be a monocolored card that is strictly better than, say, Fireblade Artist, but the fact that it is multicolored actually gives it a little bit of an edge over other cards based on just the synergy of this deck. So got to keep that in mind. Right off at the very beginning, we have Footlight Fiend, which is a hybrid Rakdos mana 1/1. When it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So it's a little cutie that, you know, helps you get off to one of those aggressive starts, but it's not the most overpowered thing, but it does allow the deck to function a little bit better as well. You got to keep in mind that we do have Spectacle cards in here, and Spectacle cards require us to deal damage to our opponent in order to get in a hidden benefit, essentially. So Light Up the Stage is a brilliant example of that. It's a 3-mana sorcery that allows us to keep going in the late game. We exile the top 2 cards of our library, and until the end of our turn, we may play those cards. And if we dealt damage to our opponent, then instead of 3 mana, we can actually pay its Spectacle cost of 1 mana, which means that in an aggro deck, we can keep those costs very cheap and do some fun stuff. So this is about one of the only non-multicolored cards in the deck, just because it allows us to keep going into the late game, which is super important in the current environment that we find ourselves in. So in our 2-drop slot, very important that we go off to an early start. So we do have Fireblade Artist as a Rakdos black and red, 2/2 with haste. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. Whenever you do, Fireblade Artist deals damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Yet again, another way of us dealing Spectacle without actually getting combat damage in. We can also sacrifice some of our creatures for hidden value. We don't have to sacrifice Fireblade himself. We can actually go with the Footlight Fiend, which means this ability in total will deal 3 damage to an opponent or planeswalker. So we could point 2 at our opponent's face and 1 at a creature if we wanted, or all 3 at our opponent's face. We also have a little bit of synergy there as well with Judith the Scourge Diva. 1, a black and a red for a 2/2 that gives other creatures you control +1/+0. So really good in an aggressive strategy. Also says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith deals 1 damage to any target. So really good for board wipe protection. It just allows us to close out that final bit of damage. So if we are playing the aggressive strategy and we've got off to a good start against something like Esper Control that might have been struggling to keep up with us, we get them down to about 5 life or something like that, play a Judith, and then all of a sudden their Kaya's Wraths are ending up in a spot where they end up killing. So it's another way to just close out the end of the game. Judith is very solid for that kind of thing, so forcing them to not actually use their board wipes is pretty sweet. Speaking of other board wipe protections, we also, right below it, have Tajik Legion's Edge. So another 3-mana legendary. This one is actually a 3/2 with haste and mentor, which means when it attacks with another creature, if that creature has less power, then he gets to put a 1/1 counter on it. So everything in the 2-drop and 1-drop slot is actually lower power than Tajik. So literally everything in the deck, now that I mention it, except for Seraph the Scales, is lower power. So Tajik always really has a mentor target, so he's effectively attacking in for 4 power in that sense, just so long as he's got another creature with him. But one of the real powerhouse effects that Tajik has is board wipe protection, as well as protection from certain removal spells as well, because it says prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. So lightning strikes, deafening clarions and things like that. All of that damage is prevented and can only be dealt to Tajik, essentially. So if we do have a threat like Judith in play, and our opponent has lightning strikes, even though they want to kill Judith, they actually have to aim at Tajik first, because otherwise all that damage is prevented. You can also pay Boros Colours as well to give it first strike, which means that it's a pretty decent attacker as well. Forces a lot of chump blocking. It's really solid for that kind of stuff, and might be the reason why you were able to get another Mentor trigger in. Pretty solid stuff. In the 2-drop slot, we have the Imperious Oligarch. It is an Orzhov coloured 2-1 with Vigilance. Not entirely sure that this card is the best for the deck, because of course it doesn't have haste, and a 2-mana 2-1 with Vigilance isn't fantastic, but it does have Afterlife to make up for it. So when it dies, it creates a 1-1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. And notice that it is white and black, and therefore will get pumped by Glass of the Guild Pact as well. So this is a 2-1 that dies and becomes a 2-2 flyer. The 2-2 flyer, I think, is much better, and probably the reason why this card is being run. I do think this is probably going to be one of the flex slots in the list, that and possibly even Seraph, for the same kind of reason that if we have a faster option, it's probably going to be the better one. But it is multicolored, so it triggers off of Hero and triggers Glass of the Guild Pact. It's board wipe protection for Afterlife, so by no means is it a terrible card, all the same. Our removal choice of option is Mortify. It is a 1 white and a black, instant speed, destroys target creature or enchantment. This is the only removal spell that we do have in the deck, so something to keep in mind there. Though, I imagine with an aggro deck, you don't really want more than 4 removal spells, unless those removal spells are burn-based, like Lightning Strike or something like that, and therefore you could use those to hit your opponent's face. The key point of Mortify, though, in this particular build, and why the submitter has actually put Mortify in the list, is because it's multicolored, so it will actually trigger Hero of Precinct 1. It's yet to be determined how effective that ends up being, whether or not the upside of getting a 1-1 creature token is worth having a 3-mana removal spell over something like Lightning Strike, as I mentioned, which can be pointed at face and just clear out the last little bit of damage. Is yet to be decided, but I guess this is what we're going to be figuring out when we go into the matches. Finally, we have Seraph of the Scales. It's a 4-mana 4-3 with flying. It can have its option of having Vigilance if you pay white, or Death Touch if you gain black. So Death Touch, super relevant, allows us to just run right through a lot of our opponent's stuff. They don't really want to block it if they can help it, so it's an easy trade with a lot of creatures, and if our opponent's on a lower life total, they're kind of forced to block it. And even if Seraph ends up dying in the exchange, then you also get Afterlife 2, which means we get 2 1-1 white and black spirit creature tokens with flying. Again, replacing a 4-3 with flying with 2 2-2s, which is essentially getting exactly the creature back, all the same in terms of power level. So that's essentially the deck. We do have a Mardu mana base here, and I do want to touch upon this a little bit, because I think it is part of the concern I have for this deck. Most of the main is pretty solid. Questionable Mortify, but I think it's still probably reasonable in this deck anyway. But I think that the mana base is probably not amazing. Mostly because this is a very greedy mana base. So we want either red or black on turn 1, which makes this plains right here quite the deadly inclusion. We might actually want this plains instead to be a Godless Shrine, which allows us to then play Footlight Fiend. We still have the same amount of white sources in the deck, but we also include an extra black source, which a turn 1 Footlight Fiend needs. Again, we've kind of got Oligarch here, so we really need Orzhov colours again, so this mountain on turn 1 stops us from playing Oligarch. I think you see where I'm going here. Having basics in this deck is kind of a problem. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, if I don't have basics, then when I get Settle the Wreckaged or Field of Ruined, I'm not going to have anything to show for it. Well, I would counter that point by saying, 1, Field of Ruin is not really played at the moment, so you can really take advantage of that by having a greedy mana base. Having all of the jewels in the area is pretty good. I haven't been Field of Ruined in a very long time, so you could stand by my point that, you know, it's worth it to just go with the greedier mana base and have all of your jewels so that you can actually cast your things more than likely, because, you know, getting Field of Ruined and not having a basic is going to be one of those rare exceptions, whereas getting mana screwed is quite possibly one of the more common downsides to the deck. So what I would do is probably cut a few of these basics, maybe leaving in Mountain as your only one, since it still allows you to play the Footlight Fiend and even the Fireblade Artist on turn 2, but even then, I probably would drop them out for some more jewels. Touching upon that settle point that I made as well, if you get settled or wreckaged on turn 4, chances are you've probably lost anyway, so the amount of basics that you end up pulling isn't really going to matter all that much. So honestly, I would probably change the mana base up a little bit just so that everything is easier to cast, because I imagine this deck loses to itself more than anything else for that reason alone. But anyway, let's go out and test the deck, shall we? I will see you guys in the games. Before we do though, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe as well if you want to see more content like this in the future. Helps out the channel a great deal and I greatly appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the games. Alright, we're in 2 lands. It's not the right coloured land for Footlight Fiend though, so that's a problem. It's one of the reasons why you probably shouldn't really be running basics in this deck, as weird as that sounds, but yeah. I think we go turn 2 Footlight Fiends into potentially turn 3 Tajik, and then that'll set up Spectacle for later. This hand's not fantastic though. And yeah, I guess we just lead off with the plains. Watery Grave. Okay, so no land for us. But Footlight Fiend getting damage in here will actually trigger Spectacle on Light Up the Stage. So that should hopefully allow us to hit some lands. Sultai, eh? Don't see this colour mash up every day. Oh wait, we do. Mid-range, woo. Thought Erasure, alright. We got a lot of uncastable things in our hands, so this really doesn't matter all that much. I guess they take up Light Up the Stage, just so that we can't chain them. That way all of their removal spells end up mattering. They go with Seraph for the scales, okay. So, Seraph is one of the more harder... Ooh, Dragon Skull Summon, eh? Well, it's currently a tap land, so maybe we can change that. Let's swing in with Footlight Fiend. Triggers Spectacle, allows us to go with Light Up the Stage. And we hit Isolated Chapel. So we can do Isolated Chapel into Hero, which sets up Tajik or Judith next turn. Again, we'll probably do... I actually don't know if we'll do Light Up the Stage this time around, because I might want Tajik in there. So they have a 1/4. Interesting. Well, the question becomes, do I actually want to have the Footlight Fiend just die in combat? Naturally, I'm not sure I do, which would mean that I'd want Tajik to mentor it. Alternatively, I could do like Fireblade Artist to turn it into a Lightning Strike. Or just swing in here, guarantee the Light Up the Stage hit. I think it's probably Tajik though. Tajik and tap land. Follow that up with Judith and whatever. At that point, I suppose it will be Judith, Light Up the Stage to keep the engine rolling. So get swinging. Stop Footlight Fiend from dying in this attack so that we can get in with everything else. Alright. Vraska, Golgari, Queen. Feels like that needs to minus on my creatures.
I leave dead bodies wherever I go.
So she can hit anything 3 mana cost or less, so she can kill Tajik if she really wants to. Yep. It's a good hit, I guess, but it's gonna die now. So that's kind of a thing. Ooh. So in order to trigger Spectacle, something's gonna have to hit face, but that should be fine. It's actually not fine, is it? Because of Sailor of Means. Basically, if we go Judith, then he can block whatever hits his face because he can't prevent Vraska from dying here, so... We could go with the Mortify instead, which allows us to hit Light Up the Stage. Could be incorrect, but a 1/4 is actually a decent blocker against us as well. this still gets us the token, which is nice, and I guess the token can swing in with an extra point with Judith next turn, so it works out in that sense. And then we get to 4 our opponent and 1 Vraska. Whereas we were actually, the other line where we played Judith, we were losing points to trying to get through the Sailor of Means there. I was almost hoping for a land there, honestly. But I think this is reasonable. Is this Big Vraska? Big Vraska's not going to be all that great, because we all just run right through her. Oh, it's Hydroid Crisis. Okay. As an X4. We have a Mortify, but then we can't play anything else. We could Judith, but we don't have decent blocks. This could be a setup turn where we use our light up the stage targets, and I think that might actually be the case. So Artist, go wide. Oligarch, go wide. And at this stage, I think I could offer a trade with the hero. Essentially, one of these 2/2s dies if I attack with everything. But we hit them for 6, which is just over half their life total, and I think that's just worth it. Hits Footlight Fiend. Interesting choice. Well, Footlight Fiend goes right to your face. And if we set up Judith, that means that board wipes are essentially lethal to our opponent, but this is not the type of deck that runs board wipes. It's just trying to set up like explore value and things like that, which our opponent never managed to get. It's a bit of a weird build of mid-range. It's not the traditional one anyway. Most of them have given up on Little Vraska and things like that, but... And obviously Sailor of Means. So maybe this was a meme mid-range list, who knows, but victory all the same. Alright, let's go for another game. Alright, we're in. 4 lands, which is probably not ideal for an opener, but it reduces the odds of us drawing lands, right? So I guess we'll take it. Mana base is pretty reasonable as well. We can put one of these shock lands into play tapped on turn 1, and then pretty much follow up with any one of these. So we'll lead with the Godless Shrine this time. So depending on the situation, we might want to go Oligarch or Blood Artist here. Not Blood Artist. That's a different card entirely. Fireblade Artist. I think we want to go for the aggro start here, so it's going to be like Artist into Tajik to push through. Because they are going to be gaining life, so we want to be pushing their life total down real low, and then later down the line getting things like Judith in play to prevent our opponent from wiping our board, or just to push through that final little bit of damage when they end up starting to be in block mode. So, Fireblade Artist. They almost certainly won't block here. Yep. They want to get Vanguard to a point where they can actually start generating life from it. So, in addition, apparently, to also having Bishop Soldier to block as well. Alright, so this is the situation, I think, where Oligarch is the correct drop. Unless we want to trade with Bishop Soldier, which might not be incorrect. Actually, what I could do is play Mountain and Judith. Now, the Artist trades with Bishop Soldier, but if they block, they lose Vanguard as well. Yeah, so that's the line we take to stop them from actually, Ooh. Take out Vanguard. Less blockers the better. Let's see if Bishop Soldier goes back. He doesn't. That's really good for us, because that gives us our window to play Tajik now. And we can even play a tap land Blood Crypt here. Things are working out. Yeah, we get the nice, because I don't think they were expecting the follow-up like that. And now Tajik can first strike to block Bishop Soldier. They have a Tajik of their own to do another follow-up. Okay. We decline this, because we don't want to lose any creatures. We got no reason to. We go Fireblade Artist to get some Tajik triggers, and Oligarch to block Tajik, or maybe the Bishop Soldier as well later down the line. Play a land drop, of course. And now we're swinging for 9. Fun and good games. Good game them back. I think they are assuming they're going to die here. It's pretty close, but we do have 4 points in the Fireblade Artist alone. And they're actually just swinging through. So, trade off there. I don't think they were necessarily dead either. But it is what it is. Right, decline these because it's worth far more. On this turn, wow, even glass. Get on in there. So, forced to block, which means a Tajik isn't enough damage to get through. Our opponent's going to go to a virtual 6 here if they swing, but then they're still dead on the crackback. Yeah. We have 2, 4, 5, 6 points just on upkeep triggers and a single spirit getting in anyway. So, pretty decent, pretty decent. Alrighty then, we're in, and everything's castable, so absolutely going to keep this one. We've got turn 1 Footlight Fiend. We will shock ourselves, because the only time that's really bad is against Aggro, and I think we can probably erase them with this hand. So, yeah, let's do it. Stomping Ground, eh? Okay. Well, let's lead off with the hero, so that we can get some value off of these oligarchs. They're a wee bit slow, but you know, we can run with them. Maybe if we get a land as well, we can go Tajik as a possibility. Elf. Ooh. This is like the Elf Bane list, I guess. Lava Coil's the hero. Okay. Well, you know, that isn't the worst when you don't really need it. Alright, so I guess Oligarch. Yeah, it's not the worst when you have like afterlife things that benefit from death and they Lava Coil the one that doesn't. So we'll lead off with the Oligarch. We want to basically go wide with our multicolored stuff before we go glass, because that last turn only added 1 power to the board. This adds 2 next turn, so I think it's worth it. Excuse me. Wee bit of a sneeze right there. Okay, so this time we will go with the Glass of the Guild Pact, because it allows us to run right through this Growth Chamber Guardian. Basically means they're not going to block, because they want to adapt this, I would assume. Unless they've got a spare in hand. Okay, well, they want to block it. It's fine by me, so we take out a little bit there blocking and run right over the top with the ping. Putting them on a wonderful 14. Is this one still elf? This one's dragon. Oh boy. We're really going all out in this deck. Alright, so we did get a land, so we have a choice. I think we go with the Tajik to basically nullify a lot of their burn here. Now the burn can only actually hit Tajik. And if we get something like a Fireblade Artist, I think we could be in a really decent spot. Just get another land, which I think is fine. We'll just go with Judith to push 4 through. And they're on such a low life total now that burning our creatures is a really bad plan. They basically have to completely wipe this board and go to 1. That's pretty much their only option. This is trigger for... Oh, this is non-tokens. Okay, so this only pings for 1 if we get a board wipe, but I mean that's still fine. We put them on 2, which a lot of our creatures just end up killing. I think short of life gain, there's just no hope for our opponent here, so Lightning Strike our Judith, and we just swing for lethal. Pretty good. Pretty good. Alrighty then, we're in, and unfortunately we have check lands, which means we're not playing until turn 3, which is completely unacceptable for a deck of this style, so... Ooh boy. This one, I think, is actually keepable with a Scry. We want to hit a land. We do need to hit a third land, but I guess we can shock in for Footlight Fiend, and then if we just get stuck on 2 lands, at least we can pump the Footlight Fiend with glasses. Yeah, why not? And Dragon Skull Summit is a reasonable top deck there. Good stuff. Isolated Chapel tapped for my opponent. Okay. Well, plan away. We are going to be quite aggressive. It's kind of what our deck's supposed to be doing. And it looks like maybe Esper. Control it is. Alright. So, if they've got, like, Thief of Sanities, then they want to be taking Mortifies so that they can land that on turn 3, but probably want to take Glass of the Guild Pact more than likely, because artifacts are quite difficult to deal with. Yep. I don't think they want all of our creatures building up to be legitimate threats on their own. So, like, even a 1/1 being a 1-mana creature being a 3/3 is not something you really want. So we do have now a turn 2/2 Footlight Fiend. Sorry, we can follow that up with Tajik and then be swinging for 6 next turn. It's not too bad. I imagine it doesn't necessarily go that way though. Oh, never mind. Budget mana base is coming back to give us some value. Perfect example of why you should invest in your shock lands and your check lands, because this probably just prevented them from holding up removal for Tajik there, which just gave me like 5 damage. So yeah, now they have to tap out for Vraska's Contempt. Undoes a little bit of it, but now it opens me up to go with the Glass of the Guild Pact, so my Footlight Fiend is now a 4/4. Guaranteed another point if it's not Vraska's Contempt, which is premium removal. This looks like another Contempt. Oh, it's Teferi. I'm Teferius. Wow, -3 on the Footlight. Please give me a hasty creature. It's always a land. Why is it always a land? Alright.
We need to move quickly.
Ah, ticks up. And now we just lose to Teferi, I guess. He goes Plaza. And untaps the stuff. And we hit more lands. Cool. Land go.
You know what? I'm not done yet.
Honestly, from this point forward, I am probably just going to hold all lands in hand, but we're drawing Footlight Fiend next turn, which my opponent obviously knows about and doesn't care because they've got Teferi, and Teferi beats all. So 4/4. Oh, it's 3/3 actually, because it was only 4 power because of Tajik. Alright. I guess it's getting contempted to protect Teferi. Sure. Honestly, this might be the best use of Mortify we'll ever get. Short of Search for Iscanter. I'm just going to take it. And just hit you.
Hey, that was uncalled for. Let's skip to the good part.
Alright. Yeah, this game's like well and truly over now. We hit way too many lands, and our opponent hit Teferi. So, we got close. No cigar. And we just hit more lands, so that's depressing. Alright, another game then. Alrighty then. We have reasonable mana. It's maybe 1 mana too much, but we can take it. So Shocked in Blood Crypt for the Footlight Fiend, and then we can follow up with either of these two, really. Opponent mulligans down to 6. Good start. Alright. Blood Crypt, Shock, and Footlight Fiend. So why does my opponent, who pays for their avatar, get to always have their avatar, whereas my Sarkhan, nowhere to be seen? That's kind of got me put off, honestly, by buying any of these avatars, because you can't even keep mine. It is what it is. I mean, I'd still pick Sarkhan anyway, because he is Bay. Alright, let's swing, see if we can get some removal out of our opponent, because obviously we'd rather have it spent on one of these two rather than the hero here. So they do ping off the Oligarch, leave us with a Spirit Token, which is pretty good. And yeah, we just played the hero, drop down either of these lands. They're both untapped anyway, so I don't think it really matters. We have no doubles in this deck either, so everything's castable. It's actually Grixis. Grixis Dragons, possibly. Might just be keeping this because Nicol Bolas is a good card. It's also a possibility. Alright, so we can go Flamebear Artist, and then the Oligarch. And we're swinging for a decent amount, actually. Best thing that we could draw now, I think, is Glass of the Guild Pact. I could also see, like, Seraph of the Scales being reasonable, since it is kind of hard to deal with. Spitflame on the Artist. Fair enough. Go in for 4. Sweet. Take them to 8. And now we have Mortify open if they play Nicol Bolas. So they basically make us discard nothing. And they can't protect it, which is pretty sweet. I think they're dead. I think this is just too much value for them. Banefire X1 is a good indicator that this is too much value. Alright, what do we get off the top? Tajik is absolutely top-notch. Alright, all attack. And that's Exaxes. Sweet. This deck's solid. I like it. Alright, we're back after a few matches. It's, from what I can tell, this deck is pretty solid as far as the main inclusions are concerned. I didn't actually mind at all not having the Mortifies there. They seemed to crop up at exactly the right time that I needed them. Only one of them during the matchup seemed to be useful, so that's pretty good. Oligarch, I think, was a little bit iffy at times, but for the most part, I think she's fine. She is pretty much the flex slot in this list, though, I would say. If you're going to cut anything for another card, it's probably going to be her. But you want to fill that slot specifically, so you want to be looking for another multicolored 2-drop, essentially, to fill this gap. I don't think you really want any more 3 and 4 drops. As I thought and suspected and worried, the mana base was a problem. We ended up hitting planes when we had Footlight Fiends in hand, and just otherwise hitting check lands in like a 3-land hand with check lands that were just straight up not keepable off of the mana base. So honestly, I think we lost a lot of the matchups due to the mana base specifically. So I think that's something that we want to change here. Just to confirm, 22 lands. So all of the flooding that I maybe included in this video, I flooded a lot, honestly. So I probably won't include all of the times that I flooded in this particular video, but it happened a lot. It's basically just variance. It's not actually a fault of the deck. If anything, we're supposed to be getting mana screwed. So yeah, 22 actually seems quite reasonable. Since we have the light up the stage to dig a little bit further, we can always get that extra bit of mana off of these anyway, so that kind of worked out. So let's just change up the mana base, I guess. We want to be cutting out anything that stops us from playing Footlight Fiend on turn 1, which is Plains for a start. And if we really want that white source, then we want to replace it with either a white-black land or a black-red land. So honestly, I think that the way this one works out, we want to also cut a swamp, add in a Godless Shrine, and a Blood Crypt at the very least. I could see myself maybe even cutting the other two basics here. But looking at this, what you can tell is we're kind of evenly split, but focused mostly on black, which is technically true for like the first. All of our 2-drops include black for the most part, or 1 and 2 drops anyway. So I actually think maybe we want to cut the mountain for another Blood Crypt. It seems like we're mostly base red-black with a splash of white. A heavy splash, I might add, but yeah, I think that's probably what the mana base wants to look like, to be honest. But yeah, for the most part, it was reasonable, but it had its moments. You know, hitting too many check lands was a problem. I honestly could see myself doing this as well, just to make sure that we have that untapped land and are less likely just to hit these checks. Because the problem with them is that they don't allow other checks to come into play untapped, whereas one Sacred Foundry, for example, allows my red check lands to come into play untapped, and also my black check lands as well. So these are super powerful, and you need at least one shock land in your hand to begin the game anyway. So I think that's basically what I would change for the deck. Maybe even get rid of this swamp and add in another dual land. Right now, as I mentioned, land hate isn't really a thing, so you can really afford to be quite greedy with your mana bases, honestly. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoy the changes, and this is a sweet deck, actually. I really enjoyed this one running it. It seems pretty reasonable for meta right now. It's pretty good against the control decks that are trying to remove creatures, since we already have protection against like burn-related removal and just removal in general with Judith, and a lot of an aggro base as well to take down the control mirrors, the control matchup, should I say. Against the aggro, we also have a bit of resilience against them. We have a lot of blocking with the Oligarchs and the Seraphs and things like that, so we can swing in at them and they can't really swing back, which is very nice, as well as Tajik as well, yet again to stop non-combat damage. I think this is actually a reasonably well-placed deck in the matchup. I don't think it's tier 1 by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm enjoying it a lot, and even the build-around card as well, being an artifact, is very useful, since the primary removal spell at the moment is Mortify, which only hits enchantments, so really solid stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed this one anyway, and if you want your deck to be critiqued in the future, you can leave it down in the comments section below, or if you are a Twitch subscriber or patron, I'd appreciate it if you left that in the subscriber decks area on Discord. Discord, of course, is very much free to join as well, so if you want to come in and hang out. We're currently in spoiler season at the moment, so there's a lot of chatting about the new cards and things like that, so if you kind of want my input on that, then you can go to the Discord and enjoy all of that. But other than that, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps out the channel a great deal. I say this every single video for a reason. I greatly appreciate anyone who does all of the liking, subscribing. Comment on what changes you would make as well. I'm interested to see if you guys have made your own glass decks and how you managed to build your decks. This is actually a card that intrigues me quite a lot, and it's one that I actually wanted to build, but Liquid Power got ahead of me and basically built the deck that I was hoping to build, I think. So, very happy to play this one. Thank you very much for submitting it. But other than that, guys, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.